Alex, if you could identify and change your name so we know who you are, if that's possible.
Because otherwise we 1686 is the last four numbers.
Yes. So if you're calling in and you're muted, if you could unmute and let us know who you are, and we can rename you if you can't do it. Phone number ending in 1686. Okay, I think we've taken care of that.
Alan, are you still seeing it?
No, whoever it was, and I'm not sure, I don't want to call it out. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
We're good. Thank you, John. Okay. We're just, Allison, are we still waiting for?
Yeah, I don't see Tony on, but I don't want to hold everybody up too much. So I think we probably should just get started. And if he rejoins us, what's that?
Hey, Alan, before we get started, I'm gonna, you've got what you need from me. I'm getting off because I'm echoing.
Okay. I've got it.
All right, are we ready, Alan?
We are ready.
Okay. Well, today's a big day. We've been joking around the office a little punchy today, saying happy UDO day. So the draft is out today. It was sent to council this morning, and it'll be sent out to the public later this afternoon. And so we'll be sending an email specifically to the Ordinance Advisory Committee. So you'll get a copy of the link and all that information that we send it to council as well. So this is a really important moment, and I just want to thank everyone that's on this call. I mean, first our consultants and staff and all their hard work, and in the many years and months of putting all of this together. I mean, this is a really big deal. And I also want to thank everyone that's on this call that has really spent time thinking about issues and providing your feedback in these meetings. I mean, you should be really proud of yourself and know that we all greatly appreciate your contributions to getting to where we are today. I think we all are extremely excited to finally have a copy in hand, and so it's pretty exciting. But I wanted to make sure that we're already getting some media inquiries, and I'm sure there's going to be some folks that thought we went too far, or people that think that maybe we didn't go far enough. And I just want to say that the first big step really is consolidating all of these things. So when you need to find information about one specific thing, you can get to it. And there's a lot of effort in just being able to consolidate things and put them into a format that's easier to understand and easier to read and interpret. But there are going to be changes along the way, and we all recognize that. So this is the first draft, and so we're expecting multiple drafts after this. And so please, when you're hearing questions from folks, understand that we're here to sit at the table with you all and answer your questions and listen to what you have to say. So what we ask of you all here is to help be ambassadors of this document and make sure your networks are aware of it. I'd love for y'all to read it. We should have a contest as to how many pages it is, because we did as staff and Alan was the winner. So it's a hefty document, and we hope that you'll make some time to go through it. But I think we're going to spend a little time today talking about, what changed and how your feedback really influenced what the draft, that's out today. And then we'll certainly have meetings going forward as we understand what issues there are or what questions that people have. So it's a great day here on the UDO team. And I would just want to say thank you to all of you, and I'll turn it back over to Alan.
Thanks, Allison. Laura, I'm getting a message on my screen that I can't share. So can somebody give me, yeah, I'm not the co-host anymore, so I'm going to need that. Otherwise, it's going to be a really short meeting. And while we're stalling for time, it looks like a couple of people may be having some audio problems. And if you are one of them, it seems that disconnecting and rejoining the meeting might help solve that. So just point that out in case you missed seeing that in the chat messages. Okay, so somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see the title slide. Thank you. We're good to go. So I don't think by this time we need to go over these, but we are live streaming today's meeting, and recordings will be available both on the charlotteudo.org webpage as well as on the planning department's YouTube channel. So you can go in a couple of days, and if you missed today's meeting or want to go back and look at something that we skipped over, you can always go back and replay these meetings and find out the information that you need. As we've been doing now for a long time, we're going to go through some slides on the screen. As we go through them, if questions or comments come to mind, you can enter them in the chat feature, and our consultants and our staff will try to respond in real time in chat, and we may periodically stop and open up microphones and have conversations about various issues as we go along, much the way that we've been doing for the last several months. So,
hey, Alan, this is Tony. I just want to apologize for being late and skip my opening comments and just say that I welcome everybody and thank them for what they're doing, and I'm excited about the first draft. So I apologize for being late. I got stuck on a NCDOT call. So glad to be here.
yeah, thank you, Tony. We're glad you made it.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for your leadership in getting us here to this first draft. So we really appreciate you as chair here. So thank you.
Thanks. Allison, you got my language?
Yeah, I did. We're good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Sorry, y'all carry on. I'll mute.
Okay. Laura, do you want to take a crack at this and see if your audio is good? If not, I'll keep going. Laura, we're not hearing you if you're on. Okay, I'm just going to keep going then.
Hey, Alan, I got it. If you
Okay.
can hear me.
Yeah, I can.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Again, the release of the first draft today, and I want to recognize that this has been an effort with obviously a lot of input from the Ordinance Advisory Committee, and we're expecting even more as we move forward. But we also have some other folks that I think it's important to recognize. We have staff, the staff team for the UDO, but a lot of other staff throughout city and even county agencies that have worked on this. And also folks who've really pulled a lot of the weight in the last few weeks. Our consultants, Arista Struntis and Chris Jeanette from Camiras. This is something we've all worked on together. So we're really excited to be where we are today, and relieved and excited. We want to, as we have worked with you guys over, the last year and a half really on this document, Alan's going to take you through some of the updates that we've made since earlier conversations. It's probably not going to cover everything. There's some new things in the draft that we haven't had as much time to discuss, but we will discuss going forward. And also what happens next in this process. So again, the draft released today. You guys should be getting a link to the document late this afternoon. There'll be press release. If you haven't seen them and you're not following us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, Nextdoor, we'll have social media blasts, and we'd appreciate it if you guys would follow us on those and share and like when you see things to get the word out. And we will also have hard copies of the document for folks who may not want to go to our website or not as technologically savvy. We'll have hard copies at probably by mid next week at public libraries and YMCAs. So if you can let your networks know that as well. Won't go into this schedule in this detail, just really to show you there are lots of moving parts. There's kind of the technical side of the content and working with council, planning commission, and other appointed boards, and also outreach with the community, which is probably going to be the biggest part of what we do over the next 8-9 months. And then specifically, obviously, the draft coming out today, we will be taking comments on the first draft and working with you guys on what we're hearing and your comments through the middle of January. Early March, we'll put out a second draft, taking comments on that, a little bit shorter time frame. Then in May, we will have, our goal is to have wrapped up kind of the big issues and put forward to council a draft for public hearing, with public hearing happening in June next year. Planning Committee of the Planning Commission making a recommendation in June. Any changes that they make would be made in what we're calling an adoption draft, which would be a fourth draft. And looking for adoption, our goal is July of next year. So that's the schedule we're working under. And we will be continuing, obviously, to work with you guys. And I think we talk about that a little bit more at the end of our discussion today.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to go over the next several slides talking about some of the changes and highlight some of the features of the UDO. And when I say changes, I mean since we last brought these particular things to the OAC for conversation in one of our previous meetings going back, probably a year and a half when we started talking. So first, we'll start with frontages because this is right up front in the UDO, and we've had various iterations of frontage types as we've developed the ordinance. This is where we have landed in our first draft of the UDO. We are establishing 9 frontage types, and I've listed them here, and they are Main Street, 4 to 5 Lane Avenue. I won't read them all, but you can see them online. If you've got any questions about frontages, please either enter them in the chat or save them for when we have some live conversations a little bit later in the meeting. So we have made some changes to dimensional standards since we have talked about them with you. Some of them are more impactful than others, but we've wanted to highlight any changes that we could. So as an example, in our innovative mixed use district, our IMU, when we first started talking about this, we had a 25-foot minimum lot width. We've eliminated that, so now there is no minimum lot width. We've made some changes to minimum lot size. Hearing some of your comments, so in some of our higher intensity neighborhood 1 zoning districts, N1E and N1F, we have reduced the minimum lot size to 3,000 square feet. And in our two of our neighborhood 2 districts, we've also slightly reduced the minimum lot size to 3,000 square feet. We've made some adjustments to some of our setbacks in some of our districts, mostly in our manufacturing and logistic districts. We've increased the side setback from 5 to 10 feet and increased the rear setback from 10 feet to 20 feet. And in our N1 districts, we will be measuring all frontage setbacks from the right of way. When we first started talking about this, our goal was to measure setbacks from the future back of curb. And that works for most of our zoning districts. But for some of our lower density residential districts, especially on local streets and collectors where there may not be a back of curb or future back of curb, or in some cases, maybe no curb at all. The simplest thing to do and where we landed was measuring all of those setbacks from the right of way. So the setback numbers have been adjusted to reflect where we're measuring from going forward. So you'll see the numbers are a little different, but the actual setback should be pretty much the same. It's just we're measuring from a different place. Sorry, clicked too soon. We've adjusted some of our open space requirements in our IMU district. We've gone from 5% to 10% of the area set aside for open space. And in our N2A, a neighborhood 2 district for multifamily stacked, we have gone from no required open space to 10%. And in our N2A zoning district for townhomes and multifamily attached, we've reduced the open space requirement from 400 square feet per unit to 250 square feet per unit, excuse me. We've made some adjustments to our maximum building heights in various districts. And the one that I think got a lot of interest was our urban center district, which is the equivalent of our current UMUD district. And it's mostly will be used in the uptown center city area. When we first started talking about this, we were proposing a height limit of 500 feet, but the ability to go taller, unlimited, if we use the various bonus options that were available. That's been changed in our current draft of the UDO to unlimited height, which is basically what UMUD is today. So we're not proposing any height limit in the uptown area as we have today. In our institutional campus 2 district, we have increased the maximum height from 50 feet to 80 feet with the ability to bonus all the way up to 200 feet. In our manufacturing and logistics 1 and 2, our industrial equivalent districts, we've increased the max height from 50 feet to 80 feet. Our neighborhood center max height is increased from 50 feet to 60 feet with the ability to bonus up to 80 feet. In our regional commercial center, which is the equivalent of our one of our business districts, we've reduced the height from 60 feet to 50. And in the general commercial, we've increased it from 40 feet to 50. So now both of our commercial districts have a 50-foot maximum height, but each has the potential to go up to 65 feet with a bonus. And then finally, in our N2B district, which is a residential, higher intensity residential district, we've increased the maximum height from 40 feet to 48 feet. So I mentioned bonus, and so there are several changes in the bonus menu. And as a lot of you know, the bonus options were something new in our revised TOD districts that we adopted 2 years ago, where development, if they provided certain community benefits, could earn points to, for the most part, build taller than the zoning district would typically allow. In some cases, there were other development options that were available in addition to height, but it was mostly used for height. So one way of doing that would be to provide affordable housing, either on-site or off-site, or through a donation to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund with a fee in lieu program. So we still have those options in place. We've added a new option for affordable housing through the Equitable Energy Efficiency Home Rehab Project. And that is a fee program, and you can see it says new there. The other thing, and the bigger thing, is the districts that these bonus options are available. Previously, it was limited to our 4 TOD districts. And as you can see, we've expanded to quite a few additional districts. Our centers districts, as well as our industrial mixed use, and even some of our campus districts for the most part. And for some of these options, have even expanded them to our 2 commercial districts. So there are a number of additional districts now, in addition to TOD, where you can use bonus. You can provide community benefits in the development and earn bonus points for development bonuses, either height or something else. One thing that's brand new is in the next category of enhanced micro mobility facility, and that's electronic micro mobility lockers. And I have to admit, this is something that's a little bit new to me. So, but I've put in parentheses what these are. It's short-term bike spaces and secure lockers with a locking mechanism that's accessed by electronic card, where no other user can open the locker while it's rented. So if your development provides that type of facility, you would be eligible to earn some bonus points for that in those zoning districts. Second page of the bonus menu, under the environmental heading, if you provide additional open space above what's normally required, you can earn bonus points, and you can see the districts that it's available in. And then we have a LEED high performance construction option. We have that today in TOD. It's LEED silver or equivalent. We have heard comments that why don't we have various bonus points available for all of the levels of LEED equivalency. And so we've introduced 3 new tiers. So now we have 4 tiers, and they are LEED or the equivalent, LEED silver, LEED gold, or LEED platinum. And we're calling them tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And obviously, the higher the standard, the more bonus points are available if the development meets one of those standards. And then finally, the final item in our bonus menu as of now is a new street connection. This is something that we've got today in TOD, but obviously the difference is we now have many more zoning districts that this option would be available in. So I'm sure we're going to have some discussion about that. Getting back to some of our dimensional standards, we have adjusted the maximum building length. We actually haven't changed the maximum building length in some of these districts, but we've offered an option of increasing the maximum building length with some additional design elements. And I won't go into all of those now, but they're generally providing some form of cut through for a long building, a pedestrian cut through. That, I believe, is mostly what those additional design elements are, that and associated requirements that go along with that. And we're offering that in our campus districts as well as in our centers and TOD. And then a minor change, but it may be impactful for some of you designers. We've increased the number of units in a townhome building or a multifamily attached from 5 units per building to 6 units per building. Small change, but it may affect how you lay out your sites. Some of the other changes that we've made to our overlay and our alternative development districts are our Cottage Court overlay district was previously limited to single family and duplex dwellings. We've added triplex dwellings into the mix. So you could, if you can make it work, use triplex dwellings in a cottage court. For our residential infill overlay district, or RIO, originally we proposed that it only be used inside of Route 4. We've eliminated that restriction, so now it can be used citywide. We've changed the percentage of owners needing to approve the initiation of that RIO district from 60% down to 51%. So a simple majority of property owners approval can initiate the process of developing a residential infill district. And then this is something that is more impactful, we think, is that we're decreasing the sidewall height of infill dwellings from 24 feet to 12 feet. That's not an absolute number. The next slide will show a graphic and we can kind of walk through what that actually does and how it impacts some other districts as well. So I know that's a lot of, that seems very confusing. Hopefully we'll clear that up very, very soon. In our conservation residential development option, which is in our N1 districts, we've added the N1D district to where that can be used. And we've done the same thing for our mixed income residential bonus option. We've added N1D. Previously, those two options were available only in N1, A, B, and C. And also in our mixed income residential bonus development option, we have changed the requirement for affordable from 70% AMI to 80% AMI so that it lines up with our other affordability provisions elsewhere in the ordinance. So the next slide, I want to get back to that sidewall change in our residential overlay district and what this actually means. So the sidewall change used to be 24 feet and we've reduced it to 12 feet. But follow me, this is for a residential infill in one of those N1 districts. Your new infill building, the sidewall height, which is, you can see measured, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, I don't think you can, but you can see on the left-hand side of this graphic, it says 12-foot maximum sidewall height. You're allowed 12 feet or the average sidewall height of the adjacent buildings. So it's not necessarily 12 feet. If your adjacent buildings are taller, your infill building can be taller. But if your adjacent buildings are, for example, one-story buildings, then your infill is limited to 12 feet or the average sidewall height, whichever is greater. So as long as you stay within the maximum height limit of that district, that's where your infill building needs to fall. And if there are questions on that, we can try to clarify how that works. And the other important thing about this particular requirement is that we also have made this a standard for duplex and triplex dwellings in our residential zoning district. So as you all know, duplexes and triplexes will now be permitted in any zoning district that permits single family dwellings. But we've added this sidewall height requirement so that duplexes and triplexes will be similar in scale to the surrounding neighborhood. We think that's going to help allay some of the concerns about that particular issue. Let's move on to changes that we've made in our 3-tier approach to parking. A few meetings ago, we talked about our parking and how we're dividing our zoning districts into 3 tiers, with tier 1 having minimum off-street parking requirements and no parking maximums. And our tier 2 group has both minimum and maximum parking requirements. And then in tier 3, we have no parking minimums and we do have parking maximums. We heard comments that maybe we needed to have parking, reduce the number of districts with no parking maximums. So the effect of those conversations, and we met as a team right after that last meeting, and we talked about these adjustments, and we actually made them at that point. We moved 3 of the zoning districts from tier 1, the districts that used to have no parking maximums and a minimum, to tier 2. And there are 2 commercial districts, CG and CR, and our Community Activity Center 1. We've moved them from tier 1 to tier 2. And the effect of that is that those 3 districts will now have both a minimum and a maximum off-street parking requirement. So they will join the other 4 districts in tier 2. And then we've moved 3 zoning districts from tier 2, which had a minimum and a maximum, to tier 3, which have no parking minimums and a parking maximum. So our Community Activity Center 2, our Regional Activity Center districts, and our Urban Edge will join TOD and UC as having no parking minimums and a parking maximum. The other significant change is that some of our tier 3 zoning districts, if they are a certain use type and they're within 200 feet of a neighborhood 1 place type, may have a parking minimum. However, and it's very small. I'm sorry, I did that again. I'm trying to click on my own slides, but whenever I do that, I advance them. If you can see in the black tier 3 way over to the right, it's very small. It says tier 3 minimums, if there is one, may be reduced or eliminated with a transportation demand management or local city parking permit program. So if there is a parking minimum in a tier 3 zoning district, which, for example, if you've got a residential project or you've got a restaurant or bar within 200 feet of a neighborhood 1 place type, it may kick in a minimum parking requirement. However, if there is a transportation demand management plan or a local parking permit program or strategy to reduce parking demand that's approved by the planning director, you may not need to meet those minimum parking requirements for tier 3. Other changes and highlights that we've made in our loading and service article, we have reduced the gross floor area trigger for having to provide loading and service areas from 50,000 square feet down to 20,000 square feet. In our landscaping and screening article 21, we've increased the minimum spacing for screening shrubs from 3 feet to 5 feet. And that 5-foot minimum also applies to the Class C landscape yards, although in Class B, it's still 3 feet. We've added additional triggers for landscape yard, and that includes a change of use or an additional use that's primarily conducted outdoors. If that happens, that may trigger the requirement for a landscape yard. And then we've also added a provision that certain stormwater facilities may be located in a landscape yard. We have made changes to the TOD district, even though our TOD district is fairly new. It was adopted a couple of years ago, but with this, we've made a couple of changes to the requirements. We've eliminated the required height step back that was causing some people a little heartburn. And we've increased the prominent entry spacing to 250 feet. That was another issue that we heard several comments on. So we've heard you on those 2 issues and have made some changes. And then as we talked about TOD, when we were developing TOD, and a number of you were here with us when we did that, we said, we're going to put a lot of stuff in TOD that will eventually move out of TOD and go into other parts of the UDO. And if you remember us saying that, now we're doing it. So in all of the bulleted items in the shaded area of this slide are things that used to be in chapter 15 of the zoning ordinance, which is the TOD section, that will move to other parts of the Unified Development Ordinance and live there permanently. So our TOD section of the ordinance will get significantly smaller. And I'll just go through them and I'll read them really quickly. And if you hear something that strikes a nerve and you want to make a comment or question on, this may trigger that in you. So the applicability of frontages, the development bonus, Parking structure design is now in the parking article of the UDO. The requirement for a traffic impact study is now in the transportation, subdivision, streets and infrastructure section. Pedestrian facilities and planning strip and amenity zone standards or streetscape standards, they're all in the subdivision, streets and infrastructure section of the UDO now. Our bus amenity requirements for when a bus stop is needed, rapid transit corridor reservation, pedestrian connectivity, the design of open space, specific architectural features, off-street parking and loading, landscape and screening, uses, use definitions, the use matrix, prescribed conditions, accessory structures, nonconformities, administration, and our general definitions have all left the TOD section of the ordinance, and they all live in different parts of the UDO today. Another change that we heard comments on as we were talking about it initially was multi-dwelling development. And when we brought it to you the first time, we had the requirement that's listed on the left where it says old. And it says on sites of 10 acres or more, multifamily development is only permitted when 40% or more of the total units on the site are other dwelling types, such as single family, detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, and townhome. We heard from some of the designers that that was going to be a problem, and we heard that. So we are suggesting a new requirement that would be applicable in the N2A and N2B districts that says that on development sites of 30 acres or more, so we've gone from a 10 acre to a 30 acre, no single dwelling type may constitute more than 2/3 of the total units in the development. So we hopefully have addressed some of the concerns. The goal hasn't changed. The goal is that in those districts, we want on large sites some diversity of housing dwelling types. And we think this will get us there and will be a little bit more palatable to developers and site designers with our new requirement. And before we leave the zoning section of the discussion, I want to mention about zoning translation. And you'll see this right up front in the UDO that you get later this afternoon. So I don't need to go through all of these. But what this is all about is that when the new UDO is adopted and eventually goes into effect, whatever that date is, all of our current conventional zoning districts will translate to one of the new UDO districts. The old districts will not exist anymore, the old conventional districts. Conditional zoning districts, of which we have many, won't change at that time. This is the same process that we used when we adopted the new TOD ordinance. So some of these current zoning districts, the translation to a new UDO district was fairly obvious. In others, it was less obvious, but this is the initial translation. Now, when we do that, we may find after the policy maps are adopted that some of our new zoning districts that we've translated to may not be quite right, may not exactly align with where the policy map and the place types are for those sites. And so we will go back and do we'll have a second, and this word always escapes me and I can't remember why, and I don't know why, but an alignment rezoning where we go back and we align parcels with their place type. So this will be the first translation of zoning districts, and this will be your new zoning district, at least temporarily, in some cases permanently, in some cases maybe only temporarily, until we come back and do alignment rezonings where we make sure that your new zoning district is the right one for the place type. So I hope that's clear, but if not, we'll open that up for discussion, and I will hopefully try to do a better job of explaining that than I just did. Some of our overlay districts in our last column, I'll just call attention to some of those. Some of them we're keeping those districts. And in others, especially our watershed overlays, we are eliminating those overlay districts because we're dealing with those watershed issues in other parts of our UDO and don't need the overlay district any longer. Going to move on to just a couple of changes that were made to our post-construction stormwater section since we brought them to you for discussion. And Jordan Miller is here to answer any detailed questions about these. I'm just going to go through them. All perennial intermittent streams draining less than 50 acres no longer mention, quote, including the 10-foot zone adjacent to the bank, unquote. No built upon area is allowed within the top 15 feet of the top of bank of the stream or pond. This applies to all watersheds. And we have removed major mitigation options removed for lots less than 1 acre, projects within business corridor revitalization districts, and redevelopment options. I'm not going to pretend to understand exactly what changes were made there, but if that rings a bell with you and you've got questions about that, we can talk about that. And Jordan's here, and I'm sure he'll be able to do a good job of explaining those changes. So at this point, let's catch up with our chat because we're at the end of that section. And if necessary, we can open up microphones and have some live discussion. So how are we doing with keeping up with chat? I can see that Laura and Arista are going. Laura, do you want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we have answered everything through chat, but we'd be glad if anyone wants to raise their hand and unmute and ask another question or get clarification on any of the responses that we provided. I can see that Eric has raised his hand, so.
Yeah, Laura, if you could just explain in your comment in chat, just what lots could be still developed that are under 3,000 square feet, and yeah, whatever alternatives you were talking about.
Sure, and I'll ask Arista and Chris and Alan to jump in. So if there happens to be an existing lot that is 2,000 square feet that already exists, it can still be developed under the regulations. So I think as we talked about, you know, when we had this conversation a while back, there are some smaller lots out there that we would want to allow to still be developed. So we also have the cottage court overlay, and I think the conservation, I'd have to look at the specifics to see how small you can go, but those do allow smaller lots. And I know Chris, Arista, if you guys want to jump in on any of that.
No, I think it pretty much covered that. It is the idea of the lot exists now under the non-conforming lot provisions that can be developed. And then there are those alternatives, in particular the cottage court, that can allow for new smaller lot type developments. I think you've pretty much covered it.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
Just a follow-up. What in terms of what a developer or a current owner would have to do to be able to easily develop those using those mechanisms, or will it involve, you know, a lot more process to go through compared to if it was just by right? Is there any differences with that, or?
It depends on which of the alternatives. Some are rezoning and some are by right, because some are different, changing character in different areas. The conservation alternative is by right. The says that residential infill probably really doesn't apply to this one. The character overlay, or which may look at existing conditions, if all the lots were smaller, you could reduce your lot size. Neighborhood character overlay and cottage court would happen through a community rezoning process.
Eric, if you were asking if you had an existing lot, You would just have to meet the development standards of whatever the zoning
your
district is. So
district.
like setbacks, height. But yeah, if you had a 2,000 square foot lot and it was already zoned for residential, you could do residential as long as, 5-foot side yard setback, probably 10 or 20-foot rear setback. And yeah, as long as you could make it fit, you wouldn't have to do anything special.
Okay. And when you're doing the rezoning on the maps of these smaller lots, they would be probably similar, like a neighborhood 1, A, B, C, D, whatever the adjacent lots are, even though their minimum lot size is smaller than the surrounding, correct? For the
Yeah,
existing
right.
lots of exist.
Well, initially we'd take the current zoning and just translate it to a new district. So if it was zoned R5, it would become N1C. If it was zoned something else, if it was zoned, commercial or something, and you want to do residential, that probably wouldn't happen.
Okay. Thank
Going through, yes, we will make this PowerPoint. Well, John Morris asked at 12:01, would we make the PowerPoint available to the community? Yes, at some point it will go on to the UDO website. Probably not for another day or two, but yes, the community has
Yeah, well,
access.
the video, Alan, goes on, and so we'll talk about the PowerPoint, because
Yeah, thank you.
just to also clarify for everyone, these are changes to what we had presented earlier in the process. It's not a comparison of our current regulations versus what's in the UDO. So that may be a little bit confusing, but make sure everyone understands that. So that this is not that magical document that would be very complex, and we've been trying to figure out how to present the information. That's not what this is. This is, we came to you maybe in March and talked about a topic, and here are some of the changes that have been made based on your conversation as well as internal staff conversation.
So see that there was a comment about not allowing 2-story duplexes and triplexes, and Arista did a good job of answering that, I believe. There's always questions about how to measure height. It seems to be a struggle. Yes, and Kiba's comment, not okay. I think Arista's answered that. Yeah, I think we've covered the questions that I see in chat.
Hey, Alan, this is
Yes,
Jordan.
Jordan. Yes, Jordan.
Hey, I just wanted to make one clarification on the stormwater slide. It talked about removing mitigation options, and it didn't include the removal of the transit station area mitigation options, but that was also removed. So I just wanted to clarify that. It just wasn't on the list there.
Oh,
We didn't get any
okay.
questions on it, but for the folks that
Okay.
are aware of that, just wanted to clarify that that was also removed for transit station area mitigation options. So
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that. I put the slide together, and obviously
No
that's my area of expertise. So thank you for the clarification.
sure.
We're really at the end of our content for today's meeting, and just have a few concluding slides.
Few more slides, yeah.
So kind of last chance for comments and questions. If not, everyone here will get an email later this afternoon, late this afternoon, I should say, and you can go in at your leisure and peruse all 608 pages of the Unified Development Ordinance. Okay, let me go back and reshare.
Okay, as Alan said, just a few more things we want to talk about with you guys today. While we have an initial draft, we said there will be multiple drafts, and we want to keep the conversation going with you guys. So we're seeing you remaining, hoping you all are all interested in remaining active and engaged in the process, even after the release of the draft this afternoon. We are setting up, excuse me, a process to gather comments. And what we're going to want to do is we get themes that we hear from people from the community to come back to you all and talk with you about some of these themes, and probably even send you some pre-work or pre-thought on those items, so that you can help us as really make adjustments to the draft. We know that this draft is not the draft that will go to council and planning commission. So it's a starting point, and we're really looking to forward to hearing how you guys feel that we can make changes. So we also invite you to provide your feedback through the website if you want. And we'd also ask that you guys serve as ambassadors for the UDO. Doesn't mean you agree with everything in here, but get the word out that it's out on the street, that we are looking for comments, and get to your groups of contacts, your organizations, and so forth, and help us get the word out. We would really, really appreciate that. And certainly, as there are organizations that might want to discuss some of this or hear from us on presentations, be presented information, we'd be glad to work with you as well. Let's see, how are we engaging people? And I think as long as Eric's pop-up shows, I can talk about that a little bit. So we'll have videos trying to make the information accessible. You're going to see the ordinance is an ordinance. And so we're trying to also provide other ways to explain some of the key concepts to be that are a little bit simpler through videos, information on our websites. We'll have what's called Choose Your Own Adventure, where you can say, I'm really interested in how this is going to impact existing neighborhoods, so I'm going to watch that video. Or I'm interested in how this impacts existing businesses, so I'm going to watch that video. Again, we'll have public comment largely through our website. We've got that set up. We're going to need information on what part of the ordinance that someone's commenting on in the comments, so that we can track those and make sure we understand. We're going to have a range right now, what we're planning on, of both in-person and virtual meetings. And we will, in the latter part of this first phase that lasts through January 14th, we will be looking at having some topical meetings as well. And I think, Eric, that was at least part of your question. So as we see really where are we getting a lot of feedback, or where do we have questions, we can get to specific topical meetings as well. Again, watch social media. If you can share, if you can like, whatever you can do to get the information out, we'd really appreciate it. With future drafts, this is a clean draft, but the next draft will have red lines of the changes made to this draft. So it should be easy to follow. As we are making changes, I made a comment on this, did anything change? I can go right to that section and see the red line changes that were made. And obviously continuing with the UDO and its capacity through the public hearing. And I may have skipped over on an earlier slide. I don't know, Alan, if there's another slide, but what we're planning on is, no, it's on this slide. I'll talk a little bit about kind of when we'll all be together again. But first, the first draft, obviously out today. We will have meetings with the community through early January, both in person and online as our current plan. Virtual. We'll accept comments on the first draft through the 14th of January. And then we'll be working on the second draft, the red line second draft. And we'll go through that cycle again. Obviously, the website, charlotteudo.org, we'll be continuing to add information on that. And we plan on meeting with the Ordinance Advisory Committee again in November we'd like to kind of start to hear feedback so we can actually use your time wisely, see how folks are, how you guys are responding to some of the themes that we may be hearing as far as the ordinance goes, what your feedback is. And certainly if you have questions in the meantime, you can reach out to any of the UDO team members. We'd be glad to answer any questions we can, any kind of clarification needed. And I know that Tony wants to close us out, but before that, anyone have anything that they want to ask about? Any additional chat we need to cover? So I'm not seeing any raised hands unless I'm missing it. Okay, Walter, I see your raised hand. I don't.
Hey, Laura, I had posted something in chat a little while back. If I understand it correctly, the sidewall height issue that Alan was explaining, if I understood it correctly, it would say that if you're doing an infill development in that infill overlay, you can't have any two-story buildings. That was the effect that I thought I saw by limiting the sidewall height. I know Matt posed some questions about finished floor elevation and sloping lots and things of that nature. But was that a correct interpretation on my part? And then further, do I correctly understand that if you do a duplex or a triplex in a single family neighborhood based on the new policies in the 2040 document, that would also be limited to single story buildings? Because the sidewall height limitation, I thought, was described as applying in those locations as well. So that was just, if somebody could clarify that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll take that, Walter. I've shared the slide on the screen again that talks about that. It is the greater of either 12 feet sidewall or the average sidewall height of the adjacent building. So take the building on either side of your infill. And if they're 2 stories and their sidewall heights are, say, 24 feet or 30 feet, then your infill building can have a sidewall height that is the greater of 12 feet or the average of the adjacent buildings. So it does not necessarily limit infill buildings to a 12-foot sidewall. That's the minimum. So if you're in a development of single-family ranch houses, it would limit your infill to a 12-foot sidewall height. But if your infill building is in a neighborhood of 2- and 3-story buildings, then your infill building could be 2 or 3 stories.
When you say the average height, if I'm building a house between 2 other houses, am I averaging the height of the 2-story house on one side and the 1-story house on the other side? So
exactly.
Like a story and a half.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you. That clarifies it for me.
And yes, this standard will also be applied to any new duplex or triplex dwellings in those zoning districts where we would allow, where we'd allow a duplex or triplex. So in our N1 zoning districts where duplexes and triplexes are allowed, we'd use this same standard. And the goal obviously is to try to keep any new development in scale with the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you.
If I could just add a clarification too, Alan, that's the height at the minimum required setback. So you're always allowed whatever the maximum height of the district is. But in those circumstances, you'd essentially just be requiring a lot to add some additional setback to get up to the maximum height of the district.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, you understand the nuances much better than I do.
Any other questions? If not, I'm not seeing any hands up. We'll turn this over to Tony.
Thank you, Laura. Again, I want to apologize for being a few minutes late. Just got sucked into an NCDOT call, but I just want to, I'm so excited about the fact that we finally have this draft coming out today. And I think it's the culmination of all of your hard work on this. And I've said all along that, if we craft a process that is thorough and rigorous and inclusive and transparent, that we will get a result that is workable for everybody and is great for Charlotte. And, this is today a visible, tangible output of that process that's very exciting. And I just want to commend everybody for all of the work that's been done. Laura and Alan and Allison and your team have just been tireless in pulling this together and just driving this train, and all the folks on our committee, from neighborhood folks to development folks to design professionals to community leaders, the sustained time and engagement that you've put in is just really impressive. And I think that we have a great example and really a model for cities to follow for the right way to do this kind of thing. And so as this now transitions more out into the public, and as it gets by and by in front of the city council, what we've done is build a base of engagement for this new ordinance and for what's to come and looking at it. And that I feel very good about that and the strength of that, and where that positions us to continue to have, and there's certainly a lot of work left to do, but we've got now a good platform to move forward for the rest of this process and to continue to be really rigorous about it and engaging and transparent and really inclusive, so that as we approach the red zone and get it down to the goal line, to use the football metaphor, we can really continue the momentum. So I just want to thank everybody in a big way for this, and looking forward to what's to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank-
Tony. I think unless anyone has any other parting words, we just want to again say thank you for all that you have done so far, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with you guys really over probably close to the at least another 6 months, probably closer to a year, to continue on with the UDO. So thanks, have a great afternoon, and watch your email.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.